I'm Vanessa Mitchell, 32 years old and Senior Director at TechVision Global. My family and I used to be close until Sophia started dating Daniel. Everything changed when Dad called about their anniversary celebration. "You're not invited," he said coldly. "Daniel feels uncomfortable around you." For months, they chose him over me. Then came that company Zoom call. Daniel froze when he saw me with the executives. He stood up, face pale, and stammered, "Hello, boss. If you're watching this, drop a comment saying where you're from and hit that like and subscribe button as I tell you how my family finally learned the truth." Growing up in Lakewood, a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Chicago, my childhood was what most would call idyllic. Our home was a charming two-story colonial with blue shutters that my father, Robert Mitchell, had painted himself. My mother, Diana, was the kind of mom who baked cookies for school events and never missed a single parent-teacher conference. We were the picture-perfect family that neighbors envied. Sunday dinners were sacred in our household. Every week, without fail, we gathered around our oak dining table, the same one my grandparents had used, and shared stories about our week. My father would carve the roast while my mother brought out her famous garlic mashed potatoes. These traditions extended to holidays, too. Christmas meant matching pajamas and taking turns opening gifts by the fireplace. Thanksgiving was all about my mother's secret recipe apple pie and going around the table sharing what we were grateful for. My sister Sophia is 4 years younger than me. With her naturally blonde hair and bright blue eyes that matched our father's, she was always the darling of the family. Growing up, Sophia and I shared a bedroom with a line of tape down the middle that neither of us dared to cross. We built blanket forts together and had secret handshakes that confused our friends. I taught her how to ride a bike in our driveway, holding the back of her seat until she found her balance. But beneath our sisterly bond ran an undercurrent of competition that intensified as we grew older. I first noticed it when I won the spelling bee in 5th grade. Sophia, only in 1st grade then, suddenly became determined to win her own spelling bee 4 years later. When I made the honor roll, Sophia would stay up studying until midnight to ensure she made it too. When I was accepted to the school newspaper, Sophia joined the yearbook committee and made sure to point out how much more creative her position was. Our parents never discouraged this competition. In fact, they seemed to fuel it with comments like, "Look how well Sophia did on her science project. Vanessa, didn't you win 2nd place in yours?" Or, "Sophia got asked to prom by the captain of the football team. Vanessa, are you going with anyone special?" The comparisons were subtle but constant. Despite all this, I excelled academically. When I received a full scholarship to Northwestern University, my parents threw a small dinner celebration but spent most of the evening reassuring Sophia that she would get into an even better school. I majored in business administration with a minor in computer science, graduating summa cum laude while working part-time to cover living expenses. My career began in an entry-level position at TechVision Global, a Fortune 500 company specializing in business software solutions. I shared a tiny cubicle with 2 other recent graduates and brought lunch from home to save money. Through consistent 60-hour work weeks and delivering results that exceeded expectations, I moved up through project management roles to team leadership positions. After 8 years with the company, I was promoted to Senior Director of Product Development, overseeing a team of 70 employees and managing an annual budget of $12 million. Despite my professional success, I never flaunted my position or salary. My apartment was comfortable but modest. I drove a practical mid-range sedan rather than the luxury car I could afford. When visiting my parents, I rarely discussed work details, preferring to listen to family news instead. This modesty wasn't just personal preference, but a value I held dear. I believe success should speak through actions and results, not through showing off. Throughout these years, 2 people remained my steadfast support system. Rachel Thompson, my best friend since college, who now worked as a pediatric nurse and lived in the apartment below mine. We met twice weekly for coffee or wine, depending on how stressful our weeks had been. And Marcus Johnson, my colleague who had started at TechVision around the same time I did. As vice president of marketing, he understood the corporate politics I navigated daily and offered perspective when I needed it most. Integrity, hard work, and fairness formed the foundation of my personal and professional life. I believed in giving credit where it was due, in offering opportunities based on merit rather than favoritism, and in being honest even when it was uncomfortable. These values had served me well in my career, but would soon be tested by family dynamics I never saw coming. Last Thanksgiving marked the beginning of the change. Sophia arrived at our parents' house with a new boyfriend in tow. Daniel Carter was tall with dark wavy hair and the kind of confident smile that immediately drew attention. He wore an expensive-looking watch and designer shoes that seemed slightly out of place for a family dinner. "This is Daniel," Sophia announced, beaming with pride. "We've been dating for 3 weeks." Daniel charmed everyone immediately. He complimented my mother's cooking with specific observations about the seasoning in her turkey stuffing. He engaged my father in a lengthy discussion about vintage cars, somehow knowing about Dad's restored 1967 Mustang without being told. He asked questions about my parents' jobs and hobbies, listening with apparent fascination to stories I'd heard a dozen times before. Throughout dinner, I couldn't shake the feeling that Daniel seemed vaguely familiar, though I couldn't place him. When he mentioned working in tech, I asked a few general questions about his role and company, but he smoothly changed the subject without providing specifics. By dessert, my parents were completely enamored. My father actually patted Daniel's shoulder and said, "You're the son we never had," while my mother nodded in agreement. The comment stung, but I brushed it aside, happy to see my family enjoying themselves. What I didn't realize was how quickly Daniel would become the center of our family dynamics and how completely he would transform my relationship with the people I had loved and trusted my entire life. Daniel and Sophia's relationship progressed at lightning speed. Within 3 months, he had practically moved into her apartment and accompanied her to every family function. Their social media accounts overflowed with couple selfies at expensive restaurants and weekend getaways. My sister, who had always been somewhat reserved about her relationships, suddenly couldn't stop talking about how Daniel was the one. As Daniel became more ingrained in family gatherings, Sophia grew increasingly distant from me. Our weekly sister lunches dwindled to monthly, then stopped altogether. My texts often went unanswered for days, with eventual replies being brief and dismissive. When I did see her at our parents' house, she seemed constantly distracted, checking her phone or whispering with Daniel. "Sophia and I are just really busy building our future together," Daniel explained smoothly when my mother mentioned the change. "We're focused on our careers right now." The explanation satisfied my parents completely. Then came the day I discovered Daniel's application in my department's hiring pool. Our team was expanding, and as I reviewed potential candidates with HR, I was surprised to see his resume. The application used his full name, Daniel Joseph Carter, which explained why I hadn't immediately recognized it. According to his resume, he had 3 years of experience in product development at a smaller tech firm and was looking to advance his career. I faced an immediate ethical dilemma. Should I recuse myself from the hiring process? After consulting with HR, we agreed that I could remain involved as long as I disclosed the relationship and evaluated him solely on qualifications. His credentials were solid, his references checked out, and his interview performance impressed the panel. Despite my personal reservations, I approved his hiring based strictly on merit. During the interview process, Daniel didn't acknowledge knowing me. He maintained a strictly professional demeanor, referring to me as Ms. Mitchell rather than Vanessa. I wondered if he genuinely didn't recognize me in this professional context, or if he was deliberately keeping our connection quiet. Either way, I respected the boundary and maintained professionalism. Daniel's first weeks at TechVision showed promise. He arrived early, asked thoughtful questions, and seemed eager to learn. However, by his second month, concerning patterns emerged. Deadlines started slipping. Project documents contained careless errors. Team meetings he was supposed to lead were hastily prepared, with missing agenda items and incomplete follow-up. One particularly troubling incident occurred when Daniel was tasked with preparing a client presentation. The night before the meeting, I received an email from him at 11:30 p.m. with a half-finished slide deck full of placeholder text and missing data. The note simply read, "Something came up." We'll finish tomorrow morning. I stayed up until 3 a.m. completing the work myself to avoid embarrassing the team and company. When confronted about these issues, Daniel had an endless supply of excuses. The requirements weren't clear. I wasn't given enough time. The systems were down when I tried to submit it. The team didn't provide the information I needed. Never once did he acknowledge his own responsibility or shortcomings. Complaints from team members started trickling in by his 3rd month. Lisa Donovan, one of our senior developers, requested a transfer out of Daniel's project group. He takes credit for other people's ideas in meetings, she explained. And when things go wrong, he blames the team. Thomas Chun, another respected team member, reported that Daniel had snapped at him for asking questions during a planning session, making him feel stupid and unwelcome. As his direct supervisor, I addressed these concerns through proper channels. I scheduled a formal performance review, documented specific incidents, and created an improvement plan with clear expectations and timelines. During our meeting, I kept the discussion focused on observable behaviors and measurable outcomes, being careful to avoid any mention of our personal connection. I'm giving you this feedback to help you succeed here, I explained. Everyone struggles during their first few months, but I need to see improvement in these specific areas. Daniel nodded and seemed receptive, but his behavior changed only superficially and temporarily. Within weeks, the same patterns reemerged, sometimes in more subtle forms. The true nature of Daniel's attitude revealed itself accidentally. One day while getting lunch in the company cafeteria, I overheard him at a nearby table with some colleagues who had joined around the same time he had. "My boss is such a stuck-up micromanager," he complained, unaware of my presence behind a pillar. Nothing is ever good enough for her. Classic case of someone who got promoted too quickly and now has to prove herself by making everyone else look bad. His lunch companions looked uncomfortable, but didn't contradict him. I remained where I was, stunned by the contrast between his public complaints and his deferential behavior in our meetings. Even more troubling were the discoveries about how Daniel portrayed his position to my family. At a birthday dinner for my father, I overheard him describing a major project launch to my parents. "I'm leading the entire initiative," he claimed. "My team is developing the core technology, and my boss mainly just signs off on what I design." The reality was that Daniel managed a small component of the project under close supervision, with significant guidance from senior team members. When my mother mentioned his job during a phone call, saying how proud they were that he was practically running the department, I realized how extensively he had misrepresented his role. Yet correcting this misconception would require revealing that he worked in my division, something Daniel had apparently kept secret. As weeks passed, Sophia began making excuses for why I wasn't invited to gatherings where Daniel would be present. "It's just a small dinner. We thought you'd be working late. We assumed you wouldn't be interested." The pattern became increasingly obvious and painful. My mother started making subtle comments that revealed Daniel's influence. "Vanessa, honey, Daniel mentioned you're quite demanding at work. You know, people respond better to encouragement than criticism." Or, "Daniel says your management style is rather intense. Have you considered taking leadership courses?" Each comment revealed how Daniel was systematically undermining my reputation with my own family while carefully maintaining a different persona at work. When I attempted to defend myself or provide context, my mother would shake her head with a small, sad smile. "I'm just trying to help, dear. Daniel has such insight into these things." I tried desperately to keep my work and family lives separate, avoiding discussing tech vision during family events and never mentioning family connections at the office. This separation became increasingly difficult as Daniel continued manipulating perceptions on both fronts. The warning signs of my family taking Daniel's side were subtle at first. My parents began calling Sophia for advice on matters they previously would have consulted me about. Holiday planning revolved around Daniel's schedule and preferences. Family photos appeared on social media from gatherings I hadn't been invited to. My mother referenced "when you two get married" when speaking about Sophia and Daniel, though they had dated less than 6 months. Little by little, I was being edged out of my own family, replaced by someone who had deliberately positioned himself as the perfect son my parents never had, while systematically undermining my professional reputation and personal relationships. Spring arrived with an announcement from my parents. We're celebrating our 35th anniversary with a weekend at the lake house, my mother told me during one of our increasingly rare phone calls. The first weekend in May. We thought it would be nice to have a family getaway like we used to. The lake house held special meaning for our family. Located 3 hours north of Chicago on the Wisconsin border, the modest cabin had been in my father's family for generations. We had spent every summer there when Sophia and I were children, swimming in the lake, roasting marshmallows, and watching fireflies from the screened porch. It was where we had scattered my grandfather's ashes and where my parents had renewed their vows on their 25th anniversary. That sounds wonderful, I replied, genuinely excited about reconnecting with my family in a place filled with happy memories. I'll request the time off tomorrow. I spent the next week planning my contribution to the weekend. I ordered my parents' favorite wine, found old family photos to create a commemorative album, and even contacted their favorite restaurant near the lake to arrange a special dinner reservation. For the first time in months, I felt hopeful about healing the growing distance between us. Then came the call that shattered everything. Vanessa. My father's voice was uncharacteristically cold when I answered the phone. There's been a change of plans. Do we need to reschedule? I asked, already opening my calendar app to check alternative dates. No, he replied. The date is the same. You're not invited. Daniel feels uncomfortable around you, and we think it's best if you don't come. The words hit like physical blows. Dad, what are you talking about? This is your anniversary celebration. And we want to enjoy it without tension, he continued. Daniel has told us how you treat him at work, constantly criticizing and undermining him. Sophia is upset about it too. That's not true, I protested. I've been completely professional with Daniel. If anything, he's the one who... My father cut me off. This is exactly the problem, Vanessa. You've always been too critical of everyone. We think you're jealous of your sister's happiness and taking it out on Daniel professionally. He says you've been giving him impossible assignments and setting him up to fail. Dad, you can't possibly believe that.
You know me.
I thought I did, he replied. But Daniel has shown us text messages you've sent Sophia, making snide remarks about him. And he's explained how you've tried to sabotage his career. Frankly, we're disappointed in you. The conversation ended with my father telling me they needed space from my negativity and that they hoped I would reflect on my behavior. I sat in stunned silence for nearly an hour afterward, phone still in hand, trying to process what had happened. The text messages my father mentioned had been completely misconstrued. In one, I had expressed concern that Sophia's relationship was moving too quickly. In another, I had asked if everything was okay after noticing Daniel's controlling behavior at a dinner. Nothing I had written contained the snide remarks my father described. When I finally gathered myself enough to call Sophia, her response was even more devastating. How could you? She demanded before I could even explain why I was calling. Daniel showed me the performance review you gave him. You're deliberately trying to get him fired because you can't stand that I'm happy. Sophia, performance reviews are confidential company documents. If Daniel showed you that, he violated company policy.
See?
There you go again, trying to get him in trouble. You've been against him from the beginning. You can't stand that Mom and Dad love him, that he's successful, that he makes me happy. That's not true. I just want... I know exactly what you want, Sophia interrupted. You want everything to be about you like it always has been. Vanessa the perfect daughter, Vanessa the successful businesswoman. Well, guess what? It's my turn now. Daniel and I are building something special, and if you can't be supportive, then stay away from us. She hung up, and my subsequent calls went straight to voicemail. Text messages remained unread. Emails bounced back with an automatic reply stating she was unavailable. The complete family communication breakdown happened with stunning speed. Within days, I found myself blocked on all social media platforms. My parents' phones went to voicemail when I called. Text messages received terse, one-word responses, if any. Through mutual family friends, I learned that Daniel had told elaborate stories about my campaign against him at work. According to these tales, I had deliberately assigned him to failing projects, excluded him from important meetings, and criticized him publicly. None of it was true, but without context, my family had no reason to doubt him. The pain intensified when I saw social media posts from family gatherings I hadn't been invited to. My cousin Emma's wedding with my entire extended family present, except me. My mother's 62nd birthday celebration at her favorite restaurant. A spontaneous family barbecue on a sunny Sunday that I would have loved to attend. In each photo, Daniel stood prominently placed, his arm around Sophia or my mother, looking every bit the devoted boyfriend and surrogate son. The caption stung even more. Family complete, and so blessed to have everyone who matters here today. One evening, after seeing yet another family photo that excluded me, I broke down during dinner with Rachel. "I don't understand how this happened," I sobbed, pushing away my untouched pasta. 29 years of being a good daughter, and they choose someone they've known for 6 months over me. Rachel reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "This isn't about you, Vanessa. It's about Daniel. He's manipulating them, and they can't see it because he's giving them exactly what they want to see. But why believe him over me? They raised me. They know me." "Sometimes the truth is harder to accept than a convenient lie," Rachel replied. "Daniel is telling them what they want to hear, making them feel special. You've always been honest, even when it's uncomfortable. That's harder for people to embrace." Work, once my sanctuary, became another source of stress. Every interaction with Daniel required careful documentation and witnesses to protect myself professionally. Every team meeting felt like navigating a minefield. I caught myself working longer hours, not just to avoid my empty apartment, but to ensure Daniel would have no legitimate complaints about my management. The toll began to show physically. Insomnia left dark circles under my eyes. I lost 10 pounds as my appetite disappeared. Anxiety attacks woke me in the middle of the night, heart racing and hands shaking. A constant tension headache became my daily companion. Christmas marked a new low. For the first time in my life, I wasn't part of the family celebration. I sent carefully chosen gifts to my parents and Sophia, wrapped beautifully with handwritten cards expressing my love despite our difficulties. 2 weeks later, the entire package was returned unopened, with "return to sender" written in my father's distinctive handwriting across the box. That night, sitting alone in my apartment surrounded by the returned gifts, I cried until no more tears would come. Then, I made a decision. If my family was determined to believe Daniel's lies without giving me a chance to defend myself, I would stop trying to change their minds. I would focus on living my life with integrity and truth, even if they couldn't see it. What I didn't realize then was that the situation was about to escalate beyond anything I could have imagined, both at work and within my family. 3 months passed with no meaningful contact from my family. This painful estrangement had become my new normal. Birthday cards I sent received no acknowledgement. Voicemails went unreturned. The few text messages that got responses were so brief and cold that they hurt more than silence would have. Meanwhile, Daniel's work performance continued its downward spiral. What had begun as occasional missed deadlines and careless errors evolved into a pattern of serious professional negligence. His team members increasingly came to me directly with concerns, bypassing him entirely. The situation reached a critical point when our company's flagship project, a customer relationship management system update worth millions in potential revenue, was assigned to Daniel's group. As senior director, I had initially considered reassigning the project but decided against it for 2 reasons. First, it would appear as though I was indeed targeting Daniel unfairly. Second, the project aligned perfectly with his team's stated expertise, and reassigning it would disrupt the entire department's workflow. Instead, I implemented additional oversight measures. Weekly progress reports. Twice weekly check-in meetings. Clear documentation requirements. These were standard procedures for high-priority projects, applied equally across all teams, but Daniel immediately complained to his colleagues that I was micromanaging him specifically. The project timeline gave Daniel's team 6 weeks to complete the first phase of development. By week 3, alarming issues emerged. Jessica Rivera, a talented developer on Daniel's team, requested a private meeting with me. "I'm concerned about the direction of the project," she explained, showing me code documentation that revealed significant architectural flaws. Daniel approved this approach despite 3 of us pointing out the scalability problems. When we pushed back, he said, "You had signed off on it already." I had done no such thing. When confronted, Daniel claimed it was a miscommunication and that he had meant to say I would be signing off on it soon. This was the first of many incidents where team members reported Daniel misrepresenting my directives or approvals. 2 weeks later, Ryan Patel, another team member, emailed me documentation showing that Daniel had missed a crucial client requirements meeting, sending a junior team member in his place without proper preparation. The client contact had specifically requested Daniel's presence due to previous commitments he had made about feature implementation. "The client was really upset," Ryan wrote. "They're questioning our commitment to the project." These issues necessitated formal intervention. I scheduled a meeting with Daniel and our HR representative, Alicia Washington. During the meeting, I presented specific examples of performance issues with dates, impacts, and witness accounts. Following company protocol, we established a formal performance improvement plan with clear metrics and weekly evaluation points. "This is a 30-day plan to address these specific concerns," I explained, keeping my tone professional despite the tension in the room. "If these issues are resolved, we'll consider the matter closed. If not, further action may be necessary." Daniel's response was a masterclass in deflection. "These so-called issues are subjective interpretations. My team has different communication styles than what you're used to. The real problem is that you don't understand modern development methodologies." Alicia intervened. "The concerns Ms. Mitchell has raised are specific and documented. They relate to missed deadlines, client complaints, and team management issues, not differences in style." "I understand," Daniel replied, his tone suddenly conciliatory. "I'll address these concerns immediately." Despite his assurances, nothing changed. If anything, his behavior worsened, but in more subtle ways that were harder to document. He began arriving exactly on time and leaving precisely 8 hours later, regardless of project needs. He fulfilled the minimum requirements of his role while avoiding any additional responsibility. His team increasingly worked around him rather than with him. My documentation became meticulous. Every email was saved. Every meeting had detailed minutes. Every decision was witnessed by at least one other manager. I consulted regularly with HR to ensure I was following every protocol perfectly. Marcus, my colleague from marketing, became an invaluable ally, often sitting in on meetings as a neutral third party. "You're handling this with more professionalism than most would," he told me after a particularly tense project review. "Anyone else would have fired him months ago." The project crisis point arrived when Daniel's team missed a crucial integration deadline. The error wasn't discovered until a weekend testing cycle, when the QA team found that essential components weren't functioning. I received an urgent call at 6 a.m. on Saturday morning. "The API connections are completely missing," explained Thomas, the QA lead. "Without them, nothing can move to production on Monday." I spent the entire weekend at the office with a skeleton crew of developers, none from Daniel's team, as he didn't respond to calls or texts. We worked 36 straight hours to rebuild the missing components from scratch, fueled by delivered pizza and endless coffee. By Sunday night, we had salvaged the situation, but the last-minute fixes would require additional testing and validation. Monday morning, Daniel arrived at his usual time, apparently unaware of the weekend crisis. When I called him into my office to discuss what had happened, he seemed genuinely surprised. "I delegated that part to Tyler," he said, referring to a junior developer who had been with the company less than 6 months. "He should have completed it." Further investigation revealed that Daniel had indeed assigned a critical system component to the most inexperienced team member without proper oversight or support, then failed to verify its completion before the deadline. In the team meeting that followed, I acknowledged everyone who had helped with the weekend rescue effort. Before I could address the underlying issues, Daniel spoke up. I want to thank my team for their hard work on this project. The solution we implemented this weekend demonstrates our ability to overcome challenges creatively. The room fell silent. Everyone present knew Daniel hadn't been part of the weekend work. Yet here he was, claiming credit for the solution and positioning himself as the team leader who had guided the effort. The stress began affecting my health more severely. I lost another 5 pounds. Migraines became frequent visitors. My doctor expressed concern about my blood pressure and suggested stress leave, which I couldn't take given the project situation. Marcus noticed my deterioration. Vanessa, you can't keep going like this. You need to escalate this situation further. I'm trying to handle it properly, I replied. If I push too hard, it will look like Daniel is right about me targeting him. At what cost to yourself? And to the company. This project is too important to risk on one person's ego. The situation gained additional complexity when CEO Franklin Edwards began asking questions about the project delays. During an executive briefing, he specifically mentioned the integration issues. This doesn't match TechVision standards, he noted, reviewing the incident report. Who's managing this component? I provided a factual account without specifically highlighting Daniel's role, but Franklin was too experienced to miss the implications. I'd like a more detailed review next week, he concluded, with all key team leaders present. Despite these mounting issues, Daniel maintained an air of confidence that bordered on arrogance. During a department lunch, I overheard him telling colleagues, "These project hiccups are being blown out of proportion. I have strong relationships throughout the company. My position is secure." The implication was clear. He believed his connection to my family somehow protected him from the consequences of his actions. This misplaced confidence only made the situation more difficult to manage. My frustration grew, but I maintained professional boundaries, focusing on documentation and proper procedures rather than personal feelings. This approach was tested most severely when I encountered my parents at Salvatore's, a restaurant near their home. I had gone there alone for dinner, seeking comfort in the familiar setting where we had celebrated countless family occasions. Halfway through my meal, my parents walked in with Sophia and Daniel. When they saw me, my mother's hand flew to her mouth in surprise. My father's face hardened. Without a word, they turned and left, Daniel's arm protectively around my mother's shoulders as if I posed some threat to her. I paid for my half-eaten meal and sat in my car for nearly an hour, too shaken to drive. The public rejection cut deeper than any private estrangement. They couldn't even share a restaurant with me anymore. That night, I called Rachel in tears. They looked at me like I was a stranger. Worse than a stranger. Like I was someone dangerous. Daniel has poisoned them against you, Rachel said firmly. But lies don't stand forever, Vanessa. The truth has a way of coming out. I didn't believe her then. But within days, her words would prove prophetic in ways none of us could have anticipated. The final incident that brought everything to a head began with a frantic call from our business development team. Archer Industries, a potential client worth a $2 million annual contract, was threatening to walk away from negotiations that had been progressing for months. "They're saying the demo we provided doesn't match what we promised in the proposal," explained Jared Fisher, our business development director. "According to them, core functionality is missing, and what is there doesn't work properly." A quick investigation revealed that Daniel had been responsible for preparing the customized demonstration, which had been delivered incomplete and with numerous errors. When questioned, he claimed he had delegated portions to team members who had failed to deliver, though those team members had email evidence showing they had completed their assignments and sent them to Daniel for final integration. The situation required immediate damage control. I organized an emergency team to rebuild the demo correctly, while our client relations department worked to keep Archer Industries at the table. 3 days of intense work followed, with most of the product team pulling double shifts to salvage the opportunity. Despite these efforts, we received word that Archer had decided to explore other options with our competitors. The $2 million contract was lost, along with the potential for expansion into related business units that could have doubled that value over time. A disciplinary meeting became unavoidable. I scheduled it with Daniel, Alicia from HR, and James Peterson, our legal director, given the financial impact of the situation. The documentation we presented included a complete timeline of the Archer Industries opportunity, email exchanges showing Daniel's responsibility for the demo, and statements from team members regarding their contributions and Daniel's failure to incorporate them. This represents a significant financial loss to TechVision, I explained, keeping my tone measured despite the seriousness of the situation. Combined with previous performance issues that have been documented, this raises serious concerns about your role here. For the first time, Daniel's confident facade cracked. His face flushed with anger as he leaned forward across the conference table. "You've had it out for me since day one," he snapped. "This is a personal vendetta because you're jealous of my relationship with your family. They've told me how you've always needed to be the center of attention, how you can't stand that they've welcomed me when they've always found you cold and career-obsessed." The room fell silent. Alicia and James exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly surprised by this revelation of a personal connection none of them had known about. "Mr. Carter," James said carefully, "are you saying you have a personal relationship with Ms. Mitchell outside of work?" Daniel seemed to realize his mistake. He straightened in his chair and adjusted his tie. "That's not relevant to this discussion. What's relevant is that Ms. Mitchell has consistently set me up to fail by assigning impossible tasks and providing inadequate resources." "That's not true," I replied calmly. "Every assignment has been appropriate for your position and experience level, with resources comparable to those provided to other team leaders." Daniel's expression hardened. "You'll regret this. My connection to your family goes deeper than you realize. One phone call, and I can make sure the board hears about your inappropriate targeting of employees you have personal issues with." The threat hung in the air for a moment before James intervened. "That statement could be construed as threatening a superior, Mr. Carter. I suggest we adjourn this meeting and reconvene tomorrow after everyone has had time to consider their positions." The next day brought the moment everything changed. A Zoom meeting had been scheduled with the senior management team to discuss the Archer Industries situation and its impact on quarterly projections. Daniel was required to attend to explain the technical aspects of what had gone wrong. I joined the call early, as did most of the executive team. Marcus was there representing marketing's interests in the lost opportunity. Various department heads and team leaders filled the other squares on the screen. CEO Franklin Edwards joined last, his presence adding weight to an already tense situation. "Before we begin," Franklin said, "I want to be clear that this meeting is not about assigning blame, but about understanding what happened and ensuring it doesn't happen again. That said, we need complete transparency about the sequence of events." I presented a factual overview of the situation, supported by documentation shared on screen. When I finished, Franklin turned his attention to Daniel's video square. "Mr. Carter, as the team leader responsible for the demonstration, can you walk us through your process and where you believe things went wrong?" Daniel began a carefully worded explanation that subtly shifted responsibility to unclear requirements and team miscommunications. As he spoke, I noticed his eyes repeatedly darting to the side of his screen, likely reviewing the participant list more carefully. Suddenly, mid-sentence, he stopped speaking. His expression changed from confident to shocked as he apparently realized for the first time exactly who I was within the company hierarchy. The senior management titles and reporting structure were now clearly visible to him. Franklin noticed the abrupt silence. "Mr. Carter? Is everything all right?" Daniel stood up from his chair, his face pale. Looking directly at me, he stammered, "Hello, boss. I didn't realize you would be leading this meeting." The stunned silence that followed was deafening. Everyone on the call seemed to freeze, trying to process the strange interaction. Franklin's brow furrowed. "Ms. Mitchell is the Senior Director of Product Development and has been with the company for 10 years. Are you saying you weren't aware of this?" Daniel's composure completely collapsed. There's been a misunderstanding. I knew she was in management, but I didn't realize her specific position." "You report directly to Ms. Mitchell, correct?" Franklin pressed. "This would be covered in your onboarding materials and organization charts." "Yes, sir," Daniel replied, visibly sweating now. I meant I didn't realize the extent of her influence. Franklin's expression hardened. Every leader at TechVision has earned their position through demonstrated excellence and integrity, Mr. Carter. Influence has nothing to do with it. Now, do you two know each other outside of TechVision? That seemed implied by your greeting. I decided transparency was the only option. Mr. Carter is dating my sister. This personal connection was disclosed to HR when he was hired, and I've maintained strict professional boundaries throughout his employment. Franklin's eyebrows rose.
I see.
And was this personal connection known to the rest of the team?
No, y replía.
To avoid any appearance of favoritism or bias, we agreed to keep our family connection separate from workplace interactions. Daniel remained standing, looking increasingly uncomfortable. Ms. Mitchell has been completely professional, he admitted, his earlier accusations notably upset now that he understood who was actually on the call. The meeting continued with a detailed analysis of the Archer situation, but the dynamic had fundamentally changed. Daniel spoke only when directly addressed, his previous confidence replaced by careful, measured responses. When the call ended, Daniel immediately requested a private video conversation. His face on my screen looked nothing like the confident man who had threatened me the day before. "Vanessa, I had no idea you were that high up in the company," he began, his tone almost pleading. "I thought you were just a mid-level manager." "My position has been clear from day one, Daniel. My title is on every email I send and on my office door." I never paid attention to that. I just assumed. He trailed off, apparently realizing how damaging his assumptions sounded. "You assumed I wasn't important enough to worry about," I finished for him. "Just like you assumed you could turn my family against me without consequences." Daniel's face paled further. "Look, I may have exaggerated some things to your family, but you have to understand, I was trying to protect my relationship with Sophia. I felt threatened by your position in the family. So, you deliberately lied to them about me. You showed Sophia confidential performance reviews. You told them I was targeting you unfairly." "I never thought it would go this far," he insisted. "Please, Vanessa, we need to work something out. My career is on the line here." "Your career has been on the line since you started failing to meet your professional obligations, Daniel. That has nothing to do with me or my family." "What are you going to do?" he asked, naked fear now visible in his expression. "I'm going to continue following company procedures, just as I have from the beginning. The senior management team and HR will make decisions about your future with TechVision based on your performance and conduct, not on personal feelings." Daniel's desperation was palpable. "Please give me another chance. I'll make things right with your family. I'll tell them the truth." "That's between you and them," I replied. "Our professional relationship remains separate from personal matters." As I ended the call, I felt an odd sense of calm despite the chaos of the situation. The truth was finally emerging, though in a way I never could have anticipated. What I didn't yet know was how quickly and dramatically the family fallout would unfold. My phone rang at 9:15 that evening. Sophia's name appeared on the screen, the first direct contact from her in months. I answered with caution, unsure what to expect. "Is it true?" she demanded without preamble. "Are you really Daniel's boss? Like his actual superior at work?" "Yes," I replied simply. "I'm the senior director of his department. I've been in this position for 2 years." "But he said," Sophia's voice faltered. "He told us you were just a team manager, that you were jealous of his rapid advancement. He said you reported to the same person he did." "That's not true, Sophia. Daniel is a project team leader who reports directly to me. I report to the executive vice president of product, who reports to the CEO." A long silence followed. When Sophia spoke again, her voice had shifted from accusatory to confused. "Why didn't you tell us?" "I tried to keep work and family separate. And honestly, after a while, no one was listening to anything I had to say." Before Sophia could respond, another call came through. My father's name flashed on the screen. "Sophia, Dad is calling me. For the first time in months." "Answer it," she said quickly. He just found out about Daniel's position too. I switched to my father's call. my heart pounding. Hello, Dad. Vanessa. His voice sounded strained. We need to talk about Daniel. He just told us some concerning things about his work situation. What did he tell you? I asked. That he misrepresented his position at the company. That he's been having performance issues. That you're actually his superior, not his colleague. My father paused. Is this true? Yes, Dad. All of it is true. I've been Daniel's direct supervisor since he was hired. Everything he told you about our work relationship was false. Another call beeped through, this time from my mother. Dad, Mom is calling now too. Put her on a conference call, he suggested. We should all talk together. Soon, both my parents were on the line, their voices overlapping with questions and exclamations. My mother's tearful voice cut through. Vanessa, Daniel just admitted he lied to us about everything. He said he was afraid you'd fire him because of his poor performance, so he tried to turn us against you first. That's not entirely accurate, I replied carefully. I've been documenting performance issues for months, following company protocols. I never threatened his job without cause. But yes, he's been deliberately misleading you about our professional relationship. Why didn't you tell us? My father demanded, echoing Sophia's question. I tried, Dad. You didn't want to hear it. You told me I was jealous and critical. You chose to believe someone you barely knew over your own daughter. My father fell silent, but my mother rushed to fill the gap. We thought we were supporting Sophia's relationship. Daniel made it seem like you were trying to sabotage him because you were jealous of their happiness. The accumulated pain of months of rejection finally spilled over. You cut me out of your lives without even giving me a chance to explain. You returned my Christmas gifts unopened. You walked out of a restaurant rather than eat in the same building as me. Do you have any idea how much that hurt? Neither of my parents responded immediately. The silence stretched uncomfortably until my father finally spoke, his voice subdued. We may have been too hasty in our judgment. The understatement was so enormous it almost made me laugh. Too hasty? You disowned me for months based on nothing but Daniel's word. We thought we were protecting Sophia, my mother interjected. Daniel was so convincing, showing us text messages and emails that seemed to prove what he was saying. Those were manipulated and taken out of context, I explained. If you had just talked to me, I could have shown you the complete conversations. My mother began to cry softly. I don't know what to say, Vanessa. We made a terrible mistake. Yes, you did. I agreed, not yet ready to offer easy forgiveness. I needed my family, and you abandoned me. Can we meet? My father asked. All of us together? We need to talk about this face to face. I hesitated, the wounds still too fresh for immediate reconciliation. I need some time, Dad. This isn't something we can fix with one conversation. After ending the call, I immediately received a text from Sophia asking if she could come over. 20 minutes later, she was at my door, her eyes red from crying. Daniel lied about everything, she said as soon as I let her in. Not just about work. He told me you said horrible things about me behind my back. He showed me texts that he claimed were from you, saying I was the favorite child and always would be. I never sent those texts, Sophia. I know that now. When I confronted him after learning about his job, he admitted he created fake conversations to show me. She collapsed onto my couch, her composure breaking. How could I have been so stupid? I sat beside her, not quite ready to offer comfort, but willing to listen. What else did he tell you? That he was being groomed for executive leadership. That he made 6 figures. That the company was planning to promote him over you because you weren't good with people. She wiped her eyes. He even claimed he owned his condo, but I just found out he's been renting it and is 3 months behind on payments. As Sophia continued revealing Daniel's deceptions, a clearer picture emerged of how thoroughly he had manipulated everyone. He had created an elaborate fiction about his career, his finances, and his relationships, playing all of us against each other to maintain his facade. What happens now? Sophia asked. At work, I mean. Will you fire him? That's not entirely my decision, I explained. There's a process involving HR and upper management. But given the lost contract and documented performance issues, his position is definitely at risk. And us? She asked quietly. Can you ever forgive me? Forgive us? I didn't have an easy answer. I don't know, Sophia. You chose to believe the worst about me without even giving me a chance to defend myself. That's not something I can just forget. The next morning brought a flurry of texts and calls from my parents, alternating between apologies and explanations of how Daniel had manipulated them. My father sent a particularly detailed email describing how Daniel had shown them doctor performance reviews and fabricated emails, presenting himself as a rising star being sabotaged by a jealous supervisor. To provide clarity, I compiled documentation of Daniel's actual work performance, carefully redacting confidential company information while still demonstrating the pattern of issues. I sent this to my family along with screenshots of the original text messages Daniel had manipulated, showing the complete conversations in their proper context. My mother called in tears after receiving the documents. We were completely fooled, Vanessa. I'm so ashamed we didn't trust you. You should be, I replied, still not ready to absolve them. You've known me my entire life. Daniel for less than a year. Yet you accepted his version of reality, without question. I know, she admitted. We got caught up in how perfect he seemed, how he made Sophia so happy. We wanted to protect that happiness. At the expense of your relationship with me. My father's attempt at reconciliation came in the form of a tentative lunch invitation. Nothing formal, he assured me. Just a chance to talk things through. I'll think about it, I promised, not yet certain I was ready for face-to-face interaction. Meanwhile, the situation with Daniel reached its conclusion at work. After recusing myself from employment decisions regarding him, I provided all relevant documentation to HR and the executive team. Given the severity of the performance issues and the loss of the Archer Industries contract, plus the evidence of deliberate deception, the decision was made to terminate his employment. Daniel did not take the news well. Security escorted him from the building after he began shouting accusations in the HR office. Later that day, he sent me a lengthy email alternating between apologies and subtle threats about exposing me to my family, apparently unaware that the truth had already emerged. Sophia broke up with Daniel the same day, after discovering even more lies he had told her about his background and finances. He claimed he grew up in Connecticut and went to Yale, she told me during a hesitant phone call. I just found out he's from New Jersey and attended community college. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but why lie about it? The pattern became clear. Daniel had created an entirely fictional persona designed to impress everyone around him, maintaining the illusion through manipulation and lies. When challenged, he had weaponized relationships to protect himself, nearly destroying our family in the process. 2 weeks later, I finally agreed to a family dinner at my parent house. The atmosphere was tense and awkward, with long silences and halting conversations. My father attempted a formal apology that sounded rehearsed and insufficient. My mother kept wiping away tears whenever she looked at me. Sophia seemed unsure of her place in the dynamic, alternating between defensive explanations and remorseful admissions. I understand you all feel bad about what happened, I said finally, addressing the elephant in the room. But understanding doesn't automatically fix things. Trust, once broken, doesn't mend itself overnight. What can we do? My father asked, his usual confidence absent. How do we make this right? I don't know if you can, I admitted. But acknowledging that this was about more than just Daniel would be a start. This happened because of patterns that have existed in our family for years. My mother looked confused. What patterns? The way Sophia's needs and feelings have always taken priority. The way my achievements were acknowledged, but never celebrated the way hers were. The assumption that I would understand and accept being sidelined because I'm the strong one or the independent one. My words hung in the air, uncomfortable truths that had never before been spoken aloud in our family. The dinner ended shortly after, with tentative plans to meet again but no real resolution. As I drove home that night, I realized that while Daniel had been the catalyst for our family's fracture, the fault lines had existed long before he appeared. Whether those cracks could be repaired remained to be seen, but at least now they had been acknowledged, visible to everyone instead of just to me. 6 months later, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new apartment, watching the Chicago skyline glitter against the evening sky. The 20th floor view had been worth every penny of the increased rent, offering a daily reminder of how far I had come, both professionally and personally. The journey toward healing had not been quick or easy. Weekly sessions with Dr. Kimberly Foster, a therapist specializing in family dynamics, had helped me process the anger and hurt that lingered long after Daniel's departure from our lives. Betrayal by family cuts deeper than any other kind, she had explained during our first session. The people who should protect you became the source of pain. That's not something you simply get over. Rachel remained my steadfast support, celebrating small victories and offering perspective when old wounds threatened to reopen. You're not building the same relationship with your family, she reminded me often. You're creating something new that acknowledges what happened and establishes healthier boundaries. Professionally, my handling of the Daniel situation had actually strengthened my position at TechVision. CEO Franklin Edwards had personally commended my professionalism during a difficult situation. You maintained integrity throughout, even when it would have been easier to act on personal feelings. 3 months after Daniel's termination, I was promoted to executive director with an expanded team and budget. My relationship with my family evolved cautiously. I established clear boundaries from the beginning. Contact would happen on my terms, when I felt ready. There would be no pretending the estrangement hadn't happened or rushing back to previous patterns. With Sophia, reconnection began through occasional coffee meetings, short and focused on rebuilding basic trust before attempting deeper conversations. Initially awkward and filled with careful small talk, these gradually evolved into more honest exchanges. I keep thinking about what you said, Sophia admitted during one such meeting. About me always being the favorite. I never saw it that way before, but looking back, there was definitely a pattern. It wasn't your fault, I acknowledged. It was a dynamic our parents created that neither of us questioned. Still, I participated in it. I enjoyed the attention without considering how it affected you. These conversations, difficult but necessary, slowly rebuilt a foundation between us. Not the same relationship we had before, but perhaps something more honest and balanced. My parents worked harder to earn back my trust, though their efforts were initially clumsy and self-serving. My father's first attempts at apology focused more on how he had been deceived than on how his actions had hurt me. My mother tried to smooth things over by acting as if nothing had happened, inviting me to family events without acknowledging the painful history. I need more than superficial reconciliation, I explained during a particularly difficult conversation. I need you to understand why what happened was so devastating. Gradually, they began to listen more than they spoke, to ask questions instead of offering explanations. My father, never emotionally expressive, made halting attempts to understand my perspective. I always thought I was treating you both equally, he admitted. I didn't see how different our relationships were. My mother struggled more with acknowledging her role. I just wanted everyone to be happy, she repeated often, finding it difficult to move beyond good intentions to recognize harmful patterns. 6 months of this careful rebuilding led to the first full family gathering since the estrangement, a Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' home. The atmosphere was different from previous years, less performative and more genuine. Smaller, too, with just the 4 of us instead of the extended family gatherings of the past. After dinner, as we sat in the living room with coffee and pie, my father cleared his throat. I've been doing a lot of thinking, he began, his discomfort with emotional conversations evident in his stiff posture. About what happened with Daniel, yes, but more about what came before. The way we've been as a family. He looked directly at me, maintaining eye contact despite his visible discomfort. You were right about the patterns, Vanessa. Your mother and I did treat you and Sophia differently. We expected more from you, celebrated you less, took your strength for granted. Robert, that's not true, my mother began, but he shook his head. It is true, Diana. Remember when Vanessa graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern? We had a small dinner at home. When Sophia graduated with honors, We threw a party and invited 30 people. My mother fell silent, the example too specific to deny. I'm not saying we didn't love you both equally, my father continued. But love without equal respect and recognition isn't enough. I failed to see that until we almost lost you completely. His words, so unexpected and honest, brought tears to my eyes. Thank you for acknowledging that, Dad. I'm sorry, Vanessa, he said simply. Truly sorry for all of it. For doubting you, for choosing Daniel's lies over your truth, for the patterns that made that choice possible in the first place. It wasn't an instant healing, but it was a genuine beginning. The wall that had stood between us for so long began to crumble, not completely, but enough to see through to the possibility of something better on the other side. My mother, watching my father's unprecedented emotional honesty, found her own courage. I always thought of you as the one who didn't need us, she admitted. Sophia seemed to need our approval and support so much more. I never realized that by assuming your independence, I was actually pushing you away. These honest conversations continued as we rebuilt our relationships on new foundations. Therapy helped, both my individual sessions and eventually a few family sessions that provided a structured space for difficult truths to be spoken and heard. The most important lesson I learned through this painful journey was about my own worth outside of family validation. For too long, I had measured myself against their approval, working harder for recognition that never quite came. The months of estrangement, though deeply painful, had forced me to find strength in myself and in the relationships I had built outside my family. The people who truly support you, Rachel had said during one of our late-night conversations, are the ones who stand by you when it's difficult, not just when it's convenient or comfortable. This truth guided my approach to all relationships now. I valued authenticity over perfection, honesty over harmony, genuine connection over obligatory contact. The freedom that came from breaking unhealthy patterns allowed me to engage with my family as an equal adult rather than a perpetual daughter seeking approval. 6 months after that Thanksgiving dinner, our family dynamic had found a new equilibrium. Not perfect, still occasionally awkward, but fundamentally more honest than before. My father made consistent efforts to acknowledge my professional achievements and personal values. My mother worked to see me as I was rather than as she had always defined me. Sophia and I developed a relationship based on mutual respect rather than competition or comparison. Daniel occasionally surfaced in conversation, a cautionary tale rather than an open wound. We had learned that he relocated to Seattle and found work at a smaller company. Sophia admitted she sometimes still struggled with how completely she had been deceived. I believed everything he said because I wanted it to be true, she reflected. I wanted the perfect boyfriend who would impress everyone, especially our parents. We all wanted to believe the version of reality he presented, I acknowledged. It was more comfortable than looking at the truth. As I stand here now, watching the sun set over the city I've always called home, I understand that forgiveness is possible, but trust requires time. Healing happens in small moments of honesty, in boundaries respected, in new patterns established and maintained. The family I have now isn't the same one I had before Daniel entered our lives, but perhaps it's stronger for having been broken and deliberately rebuilt. What was your relationship with your family like growing up? Did you ever experience feeling like the less favored child, or have you dealt with someone who tried to turn people against you? Share your experiences in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if my story resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the most painful experiences teach us the most valuable lessons about who we truly are and what we deserve from relationships. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps anyone going through similar family challenges to know they're not alone.